Good day, everyone. We're now at the start of today's webinar titled Grants and Innovation, a Great Match. I'm your host for today's webinar. My name is Mike Lasecki here at the Maricopa Community Colleges in Phoenix, Arizona. Let me talk you briefly through some webinar details so we can get through these quickly and get to our presentation. First, let me remind you that this webinar is being recorded. You'll be sent a link. The question window, which you'll see in the lower right of your screen, can be used by you to submit questions, and we'll get to them as time allows. You'll be in listen-only mode, but we'll ask you to respond to several audience polls as we proceed. Today, the webinar is being brought to you by the Centers Collaborative for Technical Assistance, the CCTA. And you can see the 5 centers that are represented in this list. These 5 collaborate to bring to you things like today's webinar. The purpose of the CCTA is to respond to a request from the Department of Labor to the National Science Foundation, essentially to leverage a lot of the work that the ATE centers have done and provide technical assistance to Department of Labor TACT grantees. But of course, these activities are relevant not only for NSF grants, Department of Labor grants, but in general, workforce-oriented grants and programs of all kinds. The CCTA has deliverables, including webinars like this, with live events and recordings, and you'll hear more about this at the end. A new feature, a live Q&A, which will occur for the first time 1 week from today. More about that, more opportunities for you to ask specific questions of the presenters. If you look at our website, you'll find a series of white papers on best practices and also convenings that occur associated with the HITECH conference this summer. But more about that later as we get further into the webinar. Let's start with a poll. Let me ask you your affiliation, but first I have to launch the poll. Just a moment. And there you go. On your screen right now, you should see check boxes that show you're involved with an NSF grant, a TACT grant, both or neither. I see many of you are already putting your results into the poll. Of course, you probably know the answer to this question. I'll give you just another moment. Okay, I'm going to count down from 5, and I'll close this poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Poll is closed. Let's go ahead and take a look at the results. Very interesting, a very even spread amongst us, and both a quarter being involved with an NSF grant, a quarter on the tax side. Some have both and some have neither. Interesting. Thank you for responding to that polling question. Let me ask you one more polling question, then we'll get started for today. Okay, almost ready to go. Thank you for your patience. It's important for us to know the impact of these webinars, and many of us get together in conference rooms and listen to this. So could you please use your response to how many people are listening with you today? Nobody other than yourself, one other person, 2 other people, 3 or more. And if it's 3 or more, you could put the actual answer in the question window, but I think it's enough if you do this. So thank you very much for recording these answers. Okay, we're almost ready to go. This is an easy one. You know the answer, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's take a look at the results. So it wouldn't surprise us that most of us are listening by ourselves, but a fair number have either 1 or 2 people involved with them. Thank you again for responding. Let's close this poll. It's my pleasure today to now introduce today's presenters. Let me begin with Ann Beheeler. Ann is our major presenter today. She is the PI of the National Convergence Technology Center at Collin College in Texas. Ann, would you say a bit more and then introduce your co-presenter, please?
Sure, I will. Our center is a national IT and communications center. We're working with 60+ colleges, and I'm also working with other colleges to help them develop their proposals. But I am not the key presenter, Mike. Thank you for that, but I'm not. The key presenter is Dr. Celeste Carter, who is the program lead for the National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Program. She also has walked in our shoes. She spent a number of years in a community college setting, actually as an instructor, and she's been with the National Science Foundation now for, I don't know, Celeste, 7 or 8 years?
It's going on 8 years.
Yeah, okay. She knows what she's talking about. We're very, very fortunate to have her. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Mike. Okay, I've done several grants or several grant proposals and helped several other people with their proposals. And one key thing is that the National Science Foundation, and actually probably any funding agency, is not going to give you money for just standard, oh, ho-hum, you need a little bit of extra money in your budget. We all know that we have tight budgets from time to time, especially in community colleges, but we're looking for some kind of innovation. And innovation can mean a lot of different things, but you really do need to start from an innovation as the very first thing as you're putting together a grant proposal. And that might be a new method of doing things, or it might be a new idea. You might be creating some kind of a new project. That's what it means in the general sense of the word innovation, but we're going to look at what it means for a National Science Foundation ATE project proposal. We do have various levels of funding in the ATE program, ranging from projects up to various centers, and our remarks today actually pertain to projects. Celeste, would you like to make a comment here?
Sure, I would. I think another thing to remember when you're thinking about what's innovative, you want to think about what's innovative for you and your students. So, and it's something you want to make clear in your project proposal and the description of your project. So it could be that you've read about people doing flipped classrooms. You've thought that this might be something that would be pretty interesting to try. A lot of people will say, well, how can that be a new method or new idea when it's people already doing this and publishing on it? It's innovative and it's new for you, and that's what you want to present. You want to say that there's already been evidence generated that this is something that helps students learn, although you have to get past that. Aren't you supposed to teach me what I know? What do you mean I have to learn this myself with the flipped classroom method? But that's new for you, so you want to present it in that terms in your project description. And another part of ATE that you want to keep in mind is that you need your industry partners, and a lot of times even your economic development agencies or your workforce investment boards. So you want to think about that in terms of what they're looking at and what's new and what do they need. So those are just a couple of the ideas for that I'd like to point out on this one. Yeah.
Mike, next slide. I think this one's going to be pretty quick. The specifics of innovation with respect to a project proposal might be, you might be focusing on something that's totally new, but exactly as Celeste has just talked about, the need might be something that's new to your college, your group of colleges, your businesses, something that has evidence, and that's going to be a word that you're going to hear a lot, evidence of having been successfully implemented, and it may be an adoption/adaptation in order to fit your needs. Let's go on to the next slide. And as Celeste also pointed out, business and industry involvement, actually business and industry commitment, is absolutely required. The ATE projects will focus on two-year graduates, two-year technician graduates, those that need to be able to get a job at the end of their studies. And that's important that the business and industry people in your area say that what you're doing is important as well. Celeste, anything here?
Sure, and I might add that this actually ties in with the need, because it could be that you know a new industry is moving into your area, you go and talk to them about their workforce needs, and you are writing your need statement in response to the commitment and the need that your industry partner is telling you about. So those two things kind of work together.
Yeah, and the picture that you're seeing here is actually a picture of our business and industry leadership team for our center in process. We meet once a year to go over the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they expect grads to have 12 to 36 months in the future. And it's an all-day meeting. It actually doesn't have to be, but they now like each other so much they stay all day. And it's a very detailed process based on a process that came from the United States Air Force. And if you want to know that, you'll have my email at the end, and you can talk to me about that too. Next slide. Okay, how are you going to address the need that you have now identified? And it's very important that you come up with what I call an elevator speech regarding the need. You need to make it succinct, quick, get your point across, because you're going to need to have support from various internal and external stakeholders in order to complete the work of the grant and the work of the proposal. So you'll have some goals and objectives and some activities, some specific things on how you're going to reach those goals. I suggest you don't have too many goals. One of my program officers along the way said 3 or 4 is it. If you give me too many, it's going to be very difficult for folks to understand. So I suggest 3 or 4 goals with associated sub-objectives, and the goals need to be SMART. And you may have heard SMART before. I have come up with some words that I will use for the S-M-A-R-T, but there are some alternatives, so you can Google that. The goals do need to be specific, measurable, agreed upon and achievable, relevant, and time-based. And we're going to talk more about that a little bit later. Celeste?
I think this is just part and parcel of continuing. You want to remember, for the National Science Foundation, a lot of people ask me, what do I want to see in a proposal as a program officer? And I'm not the first set of people that you want to convince that you've got something that's really worth being funded through a federal agency. The National Science Foundation works on the merit review process, so you have a panel of your peers, anywhere from 4 to 6 people, that are reading your proposal first, and you really want them to understand your story. So you've told them you have a need, you've addressed the fact that you're working with industry. What specifically are you going to do? Maybe it's that industry says, hey, you don't have a program in mechatronics, and this is something we want our entry-level, that's what we need for our entry-level workforce. So again, keep the goals specific and centered, and you get too many goals in there and the panelists look at it and go, oh, they'd have to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to accomplish that, and it would probably take them 5 years, and they just asked for 2 years of funding. They're so over-ambitious, there's a real problem here. So you want to think about it that way.
Celeste, isn't it true, though, too, that if you don't provide enough detail, that's not so good either?
That's right. That is correct.
Okay. Next slide, Mike. How are you going to document your qualifications? The panelists that review our proposals want to have confidence that the principal investigator and the co-principal investigators are qualified to do the work. And we present the information about that in a couple of ways. One is that we talk about the principal investigator and co-principal investigators in the actual body of the proposal, but additionally we provide bio sketches, and those bio sketches are provided on a particular format that is actually a part of the proposal and awards policies and procedure guide. You can Google PAPPG 2017 to get the latest version of it, and that will be your friend along with the solicitation, which is basically the statement of the opportunity for this year, and that's coming out fairly soon. So it's very important that you put information about the qualifications of your team in both places. And I would say that usually there would be more than just the principal investigator. Usually I think it's a little bit stronger if you have at least 1 or 2 co-principal investigators. And you can't have more than 4. Celeste, other comments that I
Sure.
omitted?
Yes. Yeah, well, I would just like to say that every once in a while you're starting out on a new venture, so maybe your industry has asked you to develop a mechatronics program, and you want to be responsive to that industry, but you actually don't have the expertise yourself. I get a lot of questions. Well, people will say, well, can I have an adjunct? Can I hire an adjunct as the person who's actually the expert in this area? And I think one of the best ways to use an adjunct, well, first of all, you got to convince them that they want to do this work, because it's going to be a lot of work doing a project. But then the next thing you want to do is you want to have your administration write a letter that says, we're going to sustain this. We think this is important. So if this program gets off the ground, we either agree to hire the person who is an adjunct as a full-time person as the program goes forward, or we will hire someone with the relevant expertise, because that's another thing. You don't want, you think about the federal funds, these are actually our taxpayer dollars. So you don't want something to be funded with our taxpayer dollars and then in 3 years the whole thing falls apart because you don't have the people there to keep everything going. So that would be the other thing I wanted to point out to everyone as far as documenting the qualifications of the people that are going to work on this project.
Thanks. Next slide. How are you going to evaluate your work? This is very, very important. It's important to have 3 or 4 key research questions and how are you going to collect the evidence to determine whether you're successful or not. And usually there's an external evaluator involved. There may be an internal evaluator on your staff or at your college, and usually there's an external evaluator not connected with your college who helps in at least the analysis of this data that get collected. And they help write, or not help write, they do write an evaluation report. I think that the stronger proposals actually lay out the person that will be the proposed evaluator. I know that's problematic within some colleges because they are required to put it out for bid, but I just don't think it's quite as strong without the evaluator actually specified. Now, with respect to the research questions, let me give you an example. We do faculty training every single summer for, well, 4.5 intense days with the goal that those faculty can go back and teach a whole new course next year based on what was done. So one of my research questions is how, and I'm going to probably butcher it here, but you'll get the essence of it, how effective has the professional development been with respect to training the faculty and what impact has occurred for the students that take the courses from those faculty. Now, the second part of that is really important because that gets that real impact. It's all well and good to train the faculty, but if they go back and say, hey, that was a really great class, but I'm not going to use it, which happens sometimes, but not too often, then it does not ultimately impact students. And to me, our goal is to train our students or educate our students so that they're right skills so that they can get a job. So we follow up our training. We do the traditional after the training. We ask, what did you think of the training? Did you feel like your objectives were met or the objectives were met? But then we do follow-up surveys at 6, 18, and 30 months after the training to find out exactly how many students have been impacted by the work, by that particular class. And in aggregate, over a span of about 4 years with about half of our people reporting, the number is about 75,000 students, and that's only with half of the participants reporting because everything is anonymous. So we take that data, we gather that data, we give it to the evaluator, and then they may do some spot checks to make sure that we're not embellishing, but they use that in the report. Celeste, comments?
Yeah, I would like to make the comment that you notice the first bullet says 3 to 4 key research questions. And if you think back to the goals and objectives, Anne made a point of having 3 to 4 main goals. Right. So your research questions should be absolutely clearly linked to each goal. And that's really what drives it. Yeah, it's not that you have to dream up these research questions out of thin air. They actually are driven by what your goal was. How would you know if you were successful for goal number one, whatever that goal was? You know, you're going to start a flipped classroom. What would that entail, first of all, to actually get that done? What happens with students? I think you can kind of see if you work from your goals and objectives in developing this evaluation and assessment plan, you won't have trouble developing research questions. So
I
I think
agree.
that's a big point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also always develop the research questions myself and then run them by the potential evaluator, and maybe we'll adjust how we do it or what the instrument might be to get the data. But they're research questions that I want answers for in general. Not that we, say, evaluator, you have to do it our way, but they do align with the goals, and they're things that I want to know whether it's effective. Next slide, Mike. How are you going to share your work? As Celeste said, this is all funded by our taxpayer money. So we can't light our candle and put it under a bushel basket if you use the vernacular. Are you going to put it on a website? Are you going to use social media to push it out? Are you going to do conference presentations? And which ones are you going to do, or which ones do you project that you will do? What kinds of publications are you going to do, or are you going to do publications? Details really do matter. Now, I did not know when we wrote our initial National Center grant exactly which conferences we would go to, but I gave some, for example, some of the STEM Tech Conference, the Innovations Conference, the AACC Conference, WDI, some of those kinds of things. I went ahead and put those conference names in there, and I think the details really do make the proposal stronger. Celeste,
I agree. Yeah, and I agree. And I would say, too, reviewers, people, when you're reading these things, one of the things people start to look at, and I hear this from reviewers a lot, is some people will say, well, we're just going to put it on our college website. And reviewers are starting to look at that and say, that's awfully passive. Isn't there anything else you're going to do? And how do you know that people are even going to stumble across it? The whole idea of if you build it, will they come? A lot of times they don't come if they don't know about it. So I would say think about this in as innovative way as you can. How do you really plan? This is important to you. Could be very important to other people at other community and technical colleges, even 4-year. One thing that's happening in the ATE program is there's a lot of dual credit courses being offered now with high school students. How are you going to let other people know that you've actually developed this and you have something which you potentially think is a best practice? So be creative. Use more than one way to share and disseminate your work. And I know, coming from a community college myself, I know that we are not always pushed for publications, but it's one of the ways that it helps clear up misperceptions that other people have about what happens on our campuses. I hear many times from the 4-year faculty that they don't think community and technical college faculty really are up to date on some of the new leading educational innovations, and I think quite the opposite. A lot of times we're out there in the forefront with problem-based learning, course-based learning, competencies and skills, and a lot of things more than just a typical we're delivering a lecture using PowerPoint and telling students that they're going to have a multiple choice exam. So if there's ways you can think creatively about publications, I think that's a real plus.
Okay. Next slide, Mike. Okay, let's talk about SMART goals. Let's drill down on it. And remember, I said there are different words that you can attach to the S and the M and the A and the R and the T. But let's go to the next slide. Okay, the goals need to be stated very specifically, very well defined and clear. Panelists, well, first of all, it's the right thing to do, but panelists are going to review on the order of 12 proposals. And in my opinion, it behooves you to write your proposal and your goals very clearly so there isn't any question in the panelist's mind what you're talking about. Look at these two examples. Which one do you think is more specific? We will implement a program to increase the number of women in IT. Based on the work of NC WIT and working with our business team, we will implement a recruitment and retention program to increase the number of women graduated by our IT program. Which one's more specific? Well, obviously it's the second one. And in looking at it right now, I might put some numbers, projected numbers of what the increase will be. And another comment on numbers, I don't know, Celeste, what you think about this, but I've been told that it's much, much better to talk in terms of actual numbers. You can give the percentages, but percentages can kind of give a strange view of things. If you have
Right.
one graduate and you're going to increase the graduates, you're going to double the graduates, well, 1 to 2 isn't huge, but 25 to 50 is. So the more specific you can make it, the better. Anything else, Celeste?
No, I just absolutely agree with that. And again, even the more detail you can give when you get to the actual way you're going to carry this out, it can be important as well. You might also want to think about in terms of this first well-defined goal. You want to let people know the number of employees that the industries around you are looking to hire, and that they specifically are interested in increasing the number of women in the industry. So the more specific and clear you can be, the better chances are that panelists are going to say, these people have really done their homework, they've got their act together, this really makes sense.
Thanks. Mike, next slide. Okay, measurable. Measurable so that you can determine progress. We're going to produce more women graduates, or our program will produce 30 additional women graduates from our program, not stated real well there, over a 3-year period. The latter is, even though it's perhaps not a good English sentence, it is very specific about what we're doing and is much better than a generality. I would say that generalities ought to be mostly left out of the proposal. Mostly things need to be pretty specific. Celeste?
Yeah, and I would just say here, you know, we do see, because one of the review criteria for the National Science Foundation is broader impacts, and one bullet point under broader impacts is increasing the number of underrepresented groups in whatever it is. Well, here's one where it's measurable, but it would be nice to know how many women are currently in the IT program, so that, again, you would know why producing 30 additional women graduates would be a big deal. So again, more detail.
Yeah, that's very important. Also, it would probably be a good idea to put in the statistics for the percentage of women in the IT workforce, which, oh, by the way, is pitiful. We just ran, we're working on a project to grow the number of women in IT with a group of 10 colleges nationally, and yeah, it's a huge, huge, huge mountain to climb. Next slide. Okay, the A has a lot of meanings: agreed upon or achievable. I think both are very important, but stakeholders are important. One person can't pull off an entire project. At the very minimum, there are others within your own college that need to help. So is it better to say one faculty member will work to improve recruitment and retention, or the entire faculty has agreed to work together along with business to improve recruitment and retention? You know, and these could be, even the latter one could be improved upon, but the importance of having agreement among the stakeholders and actually commitment from the stakeholders to do the work is very important.
So,
Celeste?
and I would add to that that I think one of the things that helps reviewers a lot is if you have a very detailed management plan. So we talked about, you know, you've got, you can have a principal investigator and several co-principal investigators. You can have senior personnel. You can have committed industry partners that are going to do something. You want to have a management plan that lets the panelists know what each person's role and responsibility is. So the PI could be the person who convenes meetings and brings the entire project team together. And then you also want to say exactly what each project team member is going to be doing. You know, maybe one of the things that you're looking to have supported is you want to have a career coach. So you would have your career coach listed. If you haven't hired one, you're asking to hire one, you could say, we've worked with so-and-so, we would look for a person with these types of qualifications, and or this is a person we have talked to who has agreed that if this project is funded and it goes through the proper hiring process, this is the type of person we would have doing this work. So again, that the detail, it doesn't do you any good to have all these people on a proposal if panelists don't know exactly how they're going to contribute to and make everything happen.
Thanks, really good points. Mike, next slide. Okay, the R means a lot of different things too. Realistic, relevant, results-oriented, within the resources available. It's important to right-size the project too. Don't be too ambitious where people on the panel look at it and say, oh, no way, it can't be done. But also don't be too conservative. It needs to have enough substance that it's worth doing. So here again, I've got basically the same comparison here. Our goal is specific in that we're going to add 30 women graduates as opposed to just generalities. But the same comments apply on the R, really, as applied on several of the other items we've already had. Celeste?
So I would just add, I hear panelists as well, because you know, a program officer always sits in a review panel and listens to everything that's said. We sometimes get to ask questions, but not all the time. But one of the things that people will say is, you know, we're not going to rank these two proposals, but my gosh, here's one that with the same amount of money is going to produce double the number of graduates for whatever the industry is. And or someone might say, well, you know, they're going to graduate 30 additional women, but you know, it's costing $100,000 per person. Is that really reasonable? Right? I mean, yeah, I'm exaggerating, obviously.
A bit.
Yeah, just a bit. But those types of things come up as well. So that hits that realistic. So you want it to be a realistic estimate, but you also want people to understand that you are working in a relevant way, and you're thinking about what you want to do with. Again, I say this a lot to reviewers. I say, remember, it's all of our taxpayer money. Is this how, has somebody convinced you that this is a good investment?
Okay, next slide. And it's important to have a timeline. These projects are 2 or 3 years in general, and it's important to say that what you're going to accomplish in the 2 or 3 years. Here's an example that I will point out. Our program will increase the number of women who graduate with an IT degree by working with middle school students. Now, I do know that it's important to work with middle school students at some point because we have to set the expectation and get them interested in the field. But can you directly link that with graduates in 3 years? I would suggest that in order to increase the number of graduates over a 3-year period, you're going to need to adopt and adapt best practices from somebody who already knows what they're doing to get those results to happen a bit quicker. Now, Celeste, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would be okay to do both. It would be okay to raise awareness a bit, but that wouldn't be the entire focus of the proposal. What do you think?
Exactly. I definitely agree. And one of the things to point out is that the Advanced Technological Education Program is a congressionally mandated program, meaning Congress said to NSF, develop this program, and the goal of this program is to educate highly qualified and skilled graduates to enter the advanced technology industries that keep the United States globally competitive. So if all you're doing is working with middle school students, just as Ann said, there's no way you're going to have graduates that are ready to, I don't know, unless business and industry really changes and they change labor laws. This isn't going to happen with middle school students. So, so another thing that comes up here as far as the sort of time-based, the other thing you want to be very aware of as you're going forward is what have other people done? Are there things out there that you can adopt and adapt so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel? Because that's another thing that people will say is that, gosh, you know, we got all the way to references in this proposal, and you know what? There's only one word on the references page, none. And they're like, surely these people should have done their homework. I mean, we can think of at least, you know, 3 or 4 sort of major projects that are out there that if they'd just done a little bit of homework, they would have found them, and they'd know that they're not starting from ground zero. There's actually things that they could adopt and adapt from other people. So you want to be sure that you do that homework, and that you don't say, you know, we are the only school in the entire United States that has thought about doing photonics. So that's just an example. Right now, I think there are over 34 optics and photonics programs of different types across the United States in community and technical colleges. So you'd at least want to know that there were that many, and maybe some of them would have materials that you wouldn't then have to develop. You could actually adapt them to your institution, and then maybe your industry people say, well, you know, this is great for the sort of fundamentals. We'd like you to develop 3 new classes or courses that really specifically speak to our industry, so that your graduates coming out are going to have this specific expertise. That's the type of thing that panelists will look at and say they really did their homework. They know what they're doing.
And I'd like to break in, if I could, with a question that's relevant here. We're just over the halfway point, so I thought we'd pause for a moment. Celeste, if it's okay. Here's a question, a lot of interest. Do you think, you mentioned the NSF's, or rather the ATE program's goals here for the workforce. How do they feel, how does the NSF feel about a focus on credentials, establishing a credential exam or supporting industry credential exams? Is there a perspective on that?
Yeah, we've actually funded, we have funded projects that have done that. Remember the ERA funding back in 2009, there was a large amount of those funds went to develop curricular materials around IT people moving into the health arena.
Oh, yes.
So it's right. So it wasn't you were going to be a nurse or a doctor or a medical technician and you need to know more about IT things. It was IT professionals moving into the health area, and the Bellevue College actually worked with one of the professional societies and developed the curriculum to support a industry validated entry-level certification for health IT entry-level technicians. So that's actually something that's I think is really important, and people, I mean, another thing to think about with our community of students who walk onto every single campus across the United States, we get everything from people who already have, maybe even already have an advanced degree, but they need specific skills and competencies. And to me, the important goal always with my students, I had a biotechnology program, was I felt I was successful when they could get a job in the industry. If that meant that there was an industry-validated certification or a certificate, an academic certificate that demonstrated they had the skills and competencies, a lot of times that would be enough. So again, you build the project description around what you think your students, your industry partners, and where those students want to get and what industry is looking for.
Makes
so yeah,
sense.
I think certifications is a great thing.
Makes real sense. I've got one more. It's sort of a technical question, but it's come up, I don't know, almost 6 times already in the questions and through email, so I'll throw this one at you again. It's about evaluation. You mentioned that, Celeste, but this one specifically says, our organization has said we cannot make a firm commitment with an evaluator prior to the proposal, even though we know and we understand it's important to do so in the proposal. It's that conundrum. Celeste, can you address that?
Yes, yeah, and I think there's, you know, one of the things you can do is if you have somebody you think you might be able to work with, even though you can be very open and say, look, it's going to have to go out for bid, but is there any way you might help me develop you know, possibly a logic model? You know, here's the things we want to do. This is what we think the outcomes are going to be. These are this is what we'll do. We'll do focus groups with students. We'll, you know, develop X, Y, and Z. A lot of times people are willing to put some time into that. I think we do have a resource within the ATE program which can possibly help you with some of this. ATE actually funds a center on evaluation. And they do webinars similar to this on developing an evaluation plan. So it's evalu-ate.org, so evaluate.org with that hyphen in there. And they also do these webinars. Matter of fact, Mike, they probably do it through Matex, so they're probably recorded and available.
They are.
Yeah, and they can help you with that problem. So you know, and again, tell reviewers what the restrictions are on your campus.
Sure.
Right? If people know about that,
Yeah.
if people know about that, they're going to say, oh, okay, we understand. You've made a best stab at working from your goals to develop how you're going to know if you're successful, evaluation and assessment, and you know it's going to be refined, hopefully, when you get awarded.
Good.
So that works too.
You know what, Ann, I'm going to turn back to you, but I'll make a comment that with all the questions that have been coming in, we have actually planned for 1 week from today a Q&A session with Dr. Carter. So in the interest of time today, we won't get to everything, but I just wanted to mention that, Ann, as I turn it back to you.
Right. Right. All of these webinars to encourage people to write good ATE proposals, there's 4 of them. And 1 week after each one of them, we're going to have a Q&A session that is a free form, ask anything you want, especially after you've listened to the presentation. And we do have that scheduled for next week on Thursday, same time, 2 o'clock Eastern. Let's go to the next slide, and then we're going to jump off into the handout. Dr. Carter has created a proposal preparation template, and it's a framework for you to put this grant proposal together. It highlights some questions that need to be answered, and it allows you to put things together as you get them, because a grant has a lot, I call them moving parts. I suppose they're not moving, but there are a lot of little pieces to putting together a competitive grant proposal. So without further ado, can we move on into that, Mike? And Celeste, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave this mostly to you to talk about, because you have 15 items and we probably have about that much time.
Okay, so let me tell you that this template was actually originally developed by some other program officers who are no longer at the National Science Foundation, and it was developed for another program which was called Transforming Undergraduate Education in STEM. So I was working with these people and asked if I could use this template, and then what I did was I modified it to reflect ATE. So the nice thing about this, and I've only used it once, I actually used it in Arizona just a few weeks ago with Mike and a whole group of faculty from around Arizona. It gives you a chance to work on this within your own time frame. You don't have to sit down and think about, oh my gosh, I have to craft a 15-page proposal that's got all of these various things in it. So you can think about this question by question, and you can save it. You're going to get this electronically. You can save it when you think about when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you start having an anxiety attack over whether or not you're going to get a proposal done, and you come up with this great response to one of the questions here, you can always open up your computer and just type it in. I don't know if anybody else does that, but every once in a while I do. But the first thing is it says select the primary focus of your proposal, and then it says more than one box can be checked. So if you're specifically, we've been talking about women in IT, you would definitely check broaden participation in STEM fields. Now, other things you could be doing that in a number of different ways, but that could be one thing you would check for that. And you can also check other. If you've got something else that you really want to do in partnership with your industry, then check other and just write it there. One of the program officers who works with this a lot, Dr. Jill Singer, she tells people use these boxes as brain dumps. So if that speaks to you at all, here's box 1 that says, what's your target audience? Is it all about undergraduates? Is it about a formal education curriculum or a program? Is it about working with a society and doing one of those certifications and developing the curricular materials to support a student being successful? Are you going to maybe reach down to grades 7 through 12? Are you thinking about dual credits? So this is where you can put as much information in there as you want. Maybe your whole purpose of this project is faculty professional development. So that's how you use this template. So Mike, if we can move down to question 2. So again, one of the things you want to think about here. So here's number 2. If applicable, describe how the project is going to provide students the opportunity to conduct research. So in ATE, there's a bunch of ways this could happen. A majority of the technician education programs support a student and actually require a student having an internship. An internship could be a research project. In some cases, people actually have developed contract research organizations on their community college campus, and students get to work there. Anything there, the second one, research can be used as a recruitment retention strategy. There's the President's Council on Science and Technology in 2012 published a report that said the earlier a student has an undergraduate research experience in the first 2 years, which is where we're focused, the higher the retention and completion of that student is in the major. So there's a lot of stuff in there about internships, industry and supported internships, undergraduate research for recruitment and retention. There's a lot of things in there from, you could look up the Council on Undergraduate Research, CUR. There's also at Carleton College, the CERC website, which was developed specifically for geoscientists. Maybe you're thinking of a GIS GPS program, or sustainable agriculture, precision agriculture, where geo actually plays a role. So again, use that and fill it out. If it doesn't apply, skip it. The third one is identify your collaborators, and this is going to help you build that that management plan. So you're going to want put as many people in there as you want. You can always take this later and say, oh, okay, so I thought I could get person X and they really aren't going to do it. But maybe you've got your industry that says, hey, you know what, we'll come and we'll do, if you guys will set up, an evening seminar series, we're willing to come and talk about what we do in our specific industry. So those sorts of things can be in there. Moving on, Mike, to number 4. A short description of your proposed project. Start thinking about how to get, there's the need. Describe your problem or challenge. Describe why it's significant within your disciplinary area, and it's based on, this is where the kind of newest buzzwords here in Washington, D.C., for a while it was transformative. Everything had to be transformative. Kind of hard to figure out if it's going to be transformative, but anyway, at this point it's now something is evidence-based. So you actually have done your homework, and go back to flipped classrooms, you know that they've been very successful in certain areas, and your specific focus is you'd like to try a flipped classroom with your students in discipline X. And so one of the things one of your research questions is going to be, in my institution, with my student population, will this work? And will I get better student learning outcomes? Will they be retained? Will they continue in the major? You can see about things like that. The next one is outline your plans for addressing it. And you can use, again, you can look at past awards that you can look at on the ATE award database. Actually, it's the NSF award database, but look at the ATE program. And there's a ribbon on the top of every NSF web page. One of the tabs on that ribbon is awards. So you can do simple searches, you can do advanced searches. But another thing is if you had a TACT award, you very well are going to have, hopefully, I know the Department of Labor wants this, lots of outcomes from your TACT award. And maybe this idea of moving to ATE is that there were things you learned from TACT, new opportunities, new areas to move, maybe continuing some of the things you've done, but also taking it in a slightly new direction. You would want to put that down as well. What do you want to see happen with changes in student learning? Again, use this as a way to start getting your ideas down on paper. So Mike, if we move on again. I like the yellow highlighter. That's pretty neat.
I'm having technical challenges here. Just a second.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. There's number 5. Thank you.
Okay, so if you have an existing program and you're going to revise courses or develop new courses, you want to let panelists know what kind of students are coming into our courses. I mean, I used to figure that's one of the most interesting things with a community college, right? Because we're open doors. It's anyone who walks through the door. So I used to have everything from a recent high school graduate to people who actually had MDs, PhDs, master's degrees, and everything in between. And so you want to build a little bit out there so that people know what you're doing. And this too could be a point where, hey, I do engineering technology, and I have usually maybe in a year I have one woman in my courses. I'd like to work with some of these organizations that have come up with best practices for recruiting and retaining women, and one of the things I'd like to do is think about revising my courses and curriculum and even my delivery so that I retain more women in the courses. So that might be something you put down there. Again, things like documenting equipment. You can ask for equipment under ATE, not as much as you could with the TACT awards, but you can ask for equipment. It's equipment that's related to the project itself. It can't be things that your institution should be providing. You know, so you can't ask for, gee, I need to outfit a new computer lab in order to do this. That's the kind of thing that your institution should do. But maybe you want to do some field-based research, and you'd like some GPS equipment and maybe some iPads so that students could be actually provide in the field, putting data into the iPads or whatever, laptop. So things like that, you want to document that. Especially if it's a big ticket item with equipment, you're going to want to have your institution say, hey, we understand NSF doesn't support service agreements. We're willing to provide the maintenance, have the money to provide or buy the maintenance agreement on this. So those types of things. Again, put all of your thoughts in there. Number 6.
So let me interrupt. In the interest of time, watch your timing on. You might have to just highlight one thing from each of these boxes, and we will be sending out this document to all of the participants, and we've got our time scheduled for next week too. So give us the high level here. Thank you.
Okay, so
again, I need a minute or so at the very end too.
Sure.
Okay, so I hope I've got the idea across of how you use this, and so let's just keep scrolling through. 6 and 7 is what did you do your homework? 7 is what's the equipment, identify it. Let's keep moving down. How are you going to build or expand a community of users and adapters? There's some of your dissemination, how you're going to get faculty involved. This one is written specifically here. It says for the geosciences, so it would be the GIS kinds of things, but beyond your community. And 10 is identify the way these activities would be sustained beyond NSF funding. So that's that. If all of this is going to go away in 3 years, you haven't really crafted a very competitive proposal. So you got to think about sustainability. So moving on down, you get to your evaluation, put in things about the formal evaluation, potentially who you think you might be able to work with, anything you want reviewers to know that it's going to have to go up for bid. 12 is the next question down is your program management plan. What are their expertise and what are they going to do? And then you've got a timeline. If you're developing several courses, you want to get a nice timeline down so people can look at it in usually less than one page and say, oh, okay, I can see how they're going to do this. And then again, 14 goes back to developing a budget that's justified. You want everything to be justified. You don't want, reviewers are told not to rate a proposal based on the budget, but if they rate it well based on the merit review criteria of intellectual merit and broader impacts, the program officers are going to go through your budget with a fine-tooth comb, and they're going to look for things like, oh, gee, let's see, you're going to take automobile trips around your state to go to the other schools, and you want $48,000 a year in travel. That just doesn't quite fit. So you want things to be justified. And then finally, 15 is, oops, sorry, all right, sorry, my cell phone's on my desk. Describe results from prior NSF support. Again, this, I'd also say if you have had development or if you've had any support from another award that is directly related to the proposal you are writing, it's fine to put that in as well. So, and I think that's all 15 questions. So this will allow you to, on your timeline, put thoughts down as they come to you, and then you can sit and start stitching these together for your project description. Okay,
Thanks,
so
Celeste. I think that was really good. Next slide, Mike. We've already done as many questions as we can, but we invite you to come back next week, 2 p.m., February 23rd, for the follow-up, and do go ahead and register for that one as well. It should be up on the CCTA website. If you have questions in advance, you can submit them to Christina Titus, who is the program director for the CCTA. That would be helpful. Next slide. And then here are the other webinars that are coming up. Each of them have a Q&A session following up. The rest of the webinars are going to be at 3 p.m. We had a conflict on this one that made it actually be at 2 p.m. Next slide. And then don't forget, in HITECH is the conference in the summer. It's from the 17th through the 20th, but we're going to have a specific half day that we're going to work with people to hone in on their grant ideas and work integrally with people, either TAC grantees or NSF grantees, people perhaps who are wanting to go to a higher level of a project, and we'll be working with them on the 21st. That registration should be going up shortly. Next slide. I think that's it. And I already told you that, so let's move on. You do have a, when we quit this, there will be a survey for you to give your feedback. Please do go ahead and provide us questions for next week, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Celeste, do you have a final word or two?
Just to let you know that one thing that the program officers at National Science Foundation can do is, if you have an idea and you can write a 1 to 2 page synopsis of your idea, you can email that to any of us at any time. and ask for feedback from us, and we can actually help out a little bit as well with thinking about some strategies, letting you know people that maybe you hadn't thought about that are doing something similar. And I know that's very different from Department of Labor, but it's something I think all of us who work on all of the programs in the Division of Undergraduate Education really like to interact with you.
And Celeste, it's Mike. You really mean that?
Yeah, really
He
do.
does.
Yeah. I have one final one that I just can't resist. It's such a good question, and we do have about 60 seconds left, so that's your time for the answer, Celeste.
Okay.
How do you grab that reviewer who's looking at your abstract in the very first minute they look at it? You want to get them nodding your head. How do you do that? How do you grab their attention and say, hey, I want to read this? How about a great insight there?
So you know what I'd do? I'd go to somebody who does, a faculty member at your campus who does marketing and PR courses,
Yeah.
and say, how do I build my elevator speech? What's my first 2 sentences supposed to be that's going to get somebody hooked right away?
It's a good idea. I'll take that.
Hey, Mike,
ahead.
one quick thing. One quick thing I'd say is the elevator speech doesn't need to be more than 2 or 3 sentences.
Right.
This is from my corporate training, and in those 2 or 3 sentences, the reviewer needs to know what you're going to do.
Yes.
And it has to be interesting.
It does. Well, friends, that takes us right to the top over the hour. We're perfectly on time. Celeste, thank you so much for taking time out of that Washington schedule. Lots of stuff going on in Washington these days. And
there is.
We do appreciate your being here. Colleagues, I just want to remind all of you that we are going to send to you, literally, I mean send it to you, a link to the PowerPoint presentation, a recording of this webinar, and the template document that Dr. Carter has provided to us. So you don't have to ask. We'll send that automatically to you as a consequence of your registration. You should see that within 24 hours. And thank you again. And Celeste, appreciate your being here. It was an interesting webinar, ton of questions, and we're looking forward to next week.
Great. Well, thank you all.
You.
Goodbye, everyone. That concludes our event for today.
Bye-bye.